So welcome to the video. I want to see if this is working properly. So I'm going to go ahead and open up YouTube and see if this is working properly. Okay. Let's see if the live is showing up for Google Codes. Hopefully it is. Let's see if the live is showing up for Google Codes. So it does work. Cool. It's good to know. Anyways, here's what I'm going to do. In today's stream, I'm going to be working on the execution logger. So execution logger is the simple logger, which is going to be used for a login basically for VFL. And there are different ways that you can log depending on the approach that we choose. So I already have one of the approach implemented that is going to be the scoped logger. Scoped logger allows you to log without having to pass the logger context, from object from instance to instance. Instead, you can just what do you call it? Yeah, you can just simply make use of a singleton class, and it's automatically going to be able to detect the hierarchy of the log flow. So execution logger is a simple implementation for that. It implements the execution logger interface. So we are not going to be exposing the execution logger implementation class. Instead, we are going to be exposing the interface. And this interface extends from the base logger. So all of the base functionalities like texting and warning, etc., those are going to be there. Including that, we are also going to be adding our own uh, methods such as run and call. Run is basically going to be taking in a function that is not going to return any value, and it's going to have access to our execution logger. And then call is quite similar in nature, except that it can accept a end message function. So whatever the result is after we execute the function, the end result can be used to process the end message. So the user can pass the end message function that is going to be used to process the end message, and this end message function is going to have access to the result of the execution method execution. So yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with that. We have call here and here. So the normal functions, the run, the call, these are going to be um, doing the operation and moving forward in the lock chain. But for here, the here variants such as run here, call here, they are going to be executing the like they're going to be logging what they need to log, but they're going to be staying in the same place. So they're not going to move down the chain. That is something I think that you guys should know. So anyways, let's get started. Let's implement all of the methods that this defines. So it defines a couple of methods, not couple, quite a lot actually. And yeah, it's done. Now we just have to define our execution logger impl. So the first thing that I can think of is we need a Boolean variable, private final atomic Boolean. So the reason we need it to be atomic is because this might be used in a multi-threaded scenario, and we want to make sure that our instance performs well even when it's being used by multiple threads at the same time. So this is going to be has block started, and this is going to be new atomic. This is going to be false by default, and let's make the S capital to make the compiler happy. Cool. Well, now we have the atomic boolean. What else do we need? We need the private. This is not going to be final. Lock data, and let's call this current lock data. Awesome. Okay, so we have the lock data, and we have this. What else we need? Yeah, we need the final. Excuse me. We would need the block info. Lock private final. block data, uh, current block info. Cool. And then we also need access to the buffer. And this buffer is going to be provided to us by the caller using the constructor. Cool. Now the first thing that we want to do is we want to ensure that the block has been created. So let's create a function called ensure block started. Block started, and this is gonna do a if we have our block started dot compare and set. So what this is going to do is it's going to check the value of block started. If it's false, then it's going to set it to true in one single atomic instruction. So that means that it's not a two-step operation. It's going to be one single instruction, and that is really good. It means that uh, there's not going to be an issue where we check an if, and by the time we set it to set it to true, it's going to be accessed by a different thread. Such scenarios are not going to be arising because this is one single instruction. It's either going to be true or false at once. Sorry, yeah, yeah, at once. It cannot be true and then you know what? Never mind. It's quite complex to explain, and I don't think I should do that right now. So we want to create a log for this log data. Create log data and push. Okay, create log and push. Let's just call this log. So this is going. The ID is not really important. Actually, you know what? Let's just create log first, and then based on the parameter, we can decide. So we want to import something that's called import dev.cuckoo.core util vfl dot star, not star actually. Let's cool. You know what? This is good. So let's generate. We should have a function, right? Generate UID. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Qualify. I see. So it has to be this way. Okay, cool. And then what do we need? We need the block ID. That is going to be just block info dot get ID. And what else do we need? Parent block ID. This dot current. Sorry, current lock data dot get ID. Let's move this to a different line so that it's easy for us to understand what's happening. And then the next one is our log type. Now log type is something that log type, and then we have the message. Message is also going to be something that needs to be passed, as well as refer RENCED reference block ID, and this is going to be we have the log type with the message, we have the reference block ID, and then instant dot now. This is going to be the current time. Now what we want to do is buffer dot push log to buffer, and we want to push our log to buffer, and once we're done with that, we're going to cool. Since you're started, we want to create log and push, and this is going to have the message of wait a minute, log type is going to be of log start. It's going to be null, and this is also going to be null. Cool. Okay. So run, and everything is there, but we don't want to resolve this just yet. Instead, what we want to resolve is the text ones. These are the simple ones. So we want to ensure that the blocks have been created. And if it has been created, what we can go ahead and do is create log and push. It's going to be of type message. The message is going to be itself. And yeah, so now that we have that current log data is equal to this. Cool. And then for the text message, we can again ensure that it started, and we do the same thing again, but now we don't really have to call this. Awesome. And then for the warn, it's again the same stuff. Create log and push. It's going to be a warn, and since this one has to move down the chain, we are updating the current log data. Warn here is also going to be the same, except that it's not going to update the current log data. Error, create log data, and exception exception and message and null. Cool. And this is going to be current log data. Cool. And then we have this one right here. We want to ensure that the block has been started, and this is going to be exception. Exception null and error. Cool. Now for closing the block, what we want to do is ensure block has been started, and we want to create a new block of type end, and the message is going to be the end message itself. And yeah, quite good. So we have set up the generic ones. These are quite simple. Don't really have to worry about that. Now what we can do next is focus on some of the other stuff. Anyways, I'm gonna go to my stream and check if it's working properly. Just again, go to my stream and check if it's okay. Good, it does work. So we can close it. We don't need to close it actually. We can just leave it as it is anyways. Yeah, let's come back in here and we have run and call function. So for this, what I would like to do is I would like to create a util function. Okay, let's call this execution logger util, and let's do a public static. Also, this is not going to be exposed because we don't really want to expose this. Then it's going to return R, and it's going to have call as the, and then not call actually. Let's what the hell? Let's give it a different name. Let's call it a block fn handler, and then let's call this block name. This is going to be the block name message, and then we're going to have a function that's going to take in the R um, as the input, and it's going to give us a string as the output, and let's call this end message function. And ultimately the last parameter is going to be the function that we want to execute. So this function will have access to our execution logger, and it's going to return an R. Cool. Now that we have defined this, let's have result, which is going to be null by default, and we want to try to execute our callable right now. So we want to apply this, and we want to pass in our stuff. So I think this has to be passed as well. Let's make it so. Let's execution logger impl, and call this the sub. Let's call this sublogger. So this has to be the sublogger instance, and so we can pass that one. And if there's an exception, what we want to do is throw new runtime exception. But before we do that, we also want to make sure that we use the sublogger to log the error message. So this can be something like exception, and then we can just do a plus e dot get class dot get simple name, and then again do a dash and start it off with simple name and get message. Cool. So now we have our exceptions and everything. And ultimately, what we want to also do is we want to make sure that we are closing the block. Close block, and now we have to provide the end message. So let's create an end message first, and this is going to be null by default. And we are going to be trying to execute the end message function if it's valid. So let's do a try and a catch. So if there's an error, what you want to do is you want to set end message to failed. Let's do a string format. Failed to process and message, and then we are gonna have a exception. So get simple name, and yeah, cool. Now we have the end message, and this is what we want to pass in here. Inside the try, we want to actually try to process the and try to execute the end message function. Apply, and this is going to be the result. So callable dot apply, this is going to go to result, and yeah, we'll have access to result. Everything looks good. Yes, I think this is quite good. So this is our block handler function. Cool. What's wrong? Oh yeah, we got to return something, right? So ultimately we have to return result. Awesome. Cool. So if you go back to our implementation now, we can make use of that specific function. So what we need to do when we run actually. You know what? Let's create one more function that's gonna act as a global handler. Yeah, private R is gonna be let's say let's call it call private R call string block name string message and then uh, function. It's gonna take in the type of let's say R and it's gonna return string and message function and then our ultimate function that's gonna be execution logger and we are gonna return the R um, callable. Awesome. Okay, so everything's looking good. What we want to do is we want to create a lock and push, and what we want to it's going to be a sub block start, right? And the message is going to be the message itself, and it's going to reference sub block ID is going to be let's say generate GNERATEUID. Come on, bro, start working properly, and this is going to be the sub block ID. Awesome. So we're creating the block first. Yeah, so we need to create another function as well. Private block data, and it's going to be create block and push. So this is going to be responsible for creating the block. So we need the block name. I think that's about it. Yeah. So block data bd is equals to new block data. We're going to generate the idea, parent block name, that other thing. Yeah, quite simple, honestly. Then buffer, and we're going to use the buffer to push this, and we are going to be return bd. Cool. So now that we have returned bd, we can go ahead and make use of this function now. So once we have specified the block ID, okay, you know what, we need to take in the ID. ID, cool, and this is gonna be of type string. Cool, so create block and push. The ID is gonna be sub block ID, and the name of the block is gonna be the block name that we have passed over to the parameter. Sorry for that. So we have created the block, we created the this. Now what we want to do is we want to take in a boolean stay. If we want to stay, sorry, if you don't want to stay, then we want to update the current log data is equals to this bd is equals to this, and then well, no, I've depend but lantani with this. So the log date is going to be this one. Now what we want to do is we want to create a new execution logger. Execution logger, a logger, sub block logger. It's new execution logger info, and we want to pass in the BD as the block info and the buffer, this buffer itself. So this is going to have the context or the information about the sub block which we just created. So it's always it's going to be interacting as a sub block. So now that we have this set up, what we can do is we can call our execution logger util.block handler, and we can pass in the block name, the message, and the end function message. The logger is going to be our sub block logger. Wait, what is this? The end message, and then the function itself. Yeah, so the function is going to be callable, and then the logger is going to be our sub block logger. Cool. Then we want to return this. Awesome. And let's make it so that execution logger info, we want to execution a logger is what we want to pass in. Cool. So now we have defined a block handler function. Just do this, we do that, and this is going to be handling executing the past callable lambda function and setting the end message as well as closing the block. Awesome, great. Okay. So now that we have defined this, we can use this in our, let's just call this sub block handler. Yeah, let's do this dot sub block handler, and we're gonna pass in the block name. The message is gonna be there. The end message function is going to be null in this case, and the callable is going to be a function, a lambda that we are going to be creating now. So it's going to be runnable dot run. What the hell, man? Runnable dot accept, and okay, yeah. So logger and return null. Good, 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 good. And we want to stay? No, we don't want to stay in this case, at least. So we're gonna copy this, and yeah, we have to ensure that it started. Okay, good stuff. Now we wanna copy this, and we want to paste this over here. Run. Okay, so let's get started with the run first. I wanna stay. As for the call, we want to ensure that this is started, and similarly, we want to use the sub block handler and pass in the block name, the message, the end message function, the callable, and the stay is going to be false itself. Yeah, so this one is quite straightforward. And here, the end message is going to be null. And yeah, quite simple. Ensure started. This one wants to stay. This function has to stay. So that is there. This one wants to stay, but it doesn't have any end message. So we gotta specify that. Cool. I think that is quite. Oh yeah, so we have to return this, return this, return this. So every call needs to return something. Awesome. So now that we have returned everything, we have our warn function, everything. I think it's quite good. Let's see. Let's kind of do a brainstorming run right now. So we have our execution logger. We are creating. We have a create log and push function that is going to be. Let's kind of add a message. Create log and push it to buffer and return it. Good. Now for this, it's gonna be create block data, push it to buffer, and return it. Cool. And now we can do the same for this. Ensure the block is created. Uh, creates a new block of type block start if it has not been created before. Uses atomic boolean to get and set in one instruction. USES. Okay, what is wrong with this? What is your problem? Okay, good stuff. Block handler. What does this actually do? Mm, creates sub block start lock. Creates sub block log and its logger, and then executes the function, yeah, and then executes the past callable. Catches catches exception. Okay, you know what? Let's do a, yeah. I think the catches exception should be on the. Okay, it's not in that case. Br catches exception and adds an error log before rethrowing. Cool, and then the other thing that it does is closes the sub block logger once call callable has finished executing. Executing. Yeah, cool. Run and all the things are quite simple. We don't really need that. Awesome. So I think this is done. We can kind of go ahead and also make some changes in here. Okay, so we are creating this, we're creating that. What we can do is the execution logger util, and we want to handle this block name. The message can be null. The end can be null. The callable is going to be the function that's being passed, and root logger. So this is going to handle quite a lot of things for us, and ultimately, we'll try the catch ways to restore. Okay, so yeah. So this is what we want to do. We want to try to do this, and if we catch an exception, we don't want to catch exception. We just want to do a. No, we actually do want to catch exception for this. Wait, we do catch the exception, and we do close the. We just want to do a finally and root logger to close. Cool. We can do a return. Awesome. And if it does reach here, return null or something like that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. No. So we can do a result. Result. Awesome. Cool. So it seems to be working pretty fine. Now let's go ahead and check our main code. So we are already making use of execution logger, as you can see right here, execution logger. So let's make sure that our functions are package private. So class, so only the interface is exposed, and the runner, only these two functions are exposed. So that's good. Awesome. Okay, so if we execute our code right now, we should see a bunch of stuff. But before we do that, let me go through what we are setting up. So we are setting up an in-memory flush handler. So this is a flush handler which is going to be used by our buffer. Our buffer is a thread-safe synchronous buffer, which means that it's not going to be synchronous. It's going to block the thread until it's done flushing. And for testing purpose or small applications, this is more than okay. We don't really need to go too complex. Cool, cool, cool. And yeah, so we pass in the size of the buffer as well as the flush handler. So we have that, and then we are calling the execution logger.run. So this is going to call this function. This call is going to use the execution log runner.run method to wrap its function. So this is the only wrapper that you kind of have to do if you want to. Yeah. So we have this, we have that, and then we have all of this. Okay. Anyways, there's one thing that I just remembered, and I think I should write it down. Base logger. Yeah, I'll write it down. Function that takes in lambda functions and return and locks and return the value. Cool. Cool, yeah. So we are locking all of this stuff. This is going to start the logger for this specific block, and it's going to have the block name of execution logger example, and then it's gonna do all of these things, and then uh, it's going to call a nested subblock. It's going to create a subblock logger, and it's done right here in this call function. This call function is going to be creating a subblock logger of, and its name is going to be square from root, and the message that we want to show is squaring, and then we're gonna call the square method and pass the input as well as the logger. So you might have seen that the approach or one of the limitation with this approach is that you have to explicitly pass the logger instance. But yeah, That is one of the hassle that we have to uh, take because that's the whole thing about execution logger. That's how it works. If you don't want to pass execute our logger from function to function, we do have other options, but yeah, execution logger does not have that. We can use scoped logger if you want to achieve that. Scoped logger makes use of scoped value, but scoped value is a preview feature, so you can use at your own risk. It doesn't really have any drawbacks, I would say, but it's still not officially in. It's still in beta phase. Okay, so if we run our program, we should see a bunch of logs, and then we can use LLMs. Okay, null pointer exception. Unlock data is null. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Issue with this is we are trying to set. Yeah, so what we want to do is this .unlock data is equal to null. If it's null, then we're just gonna pass null, or else we are going to make use of this .unlock.data. Awesome. Okay, let's input something 32, and we got some logs. Now I'm not going to be viewing them manually. Instead, I'm going to make use of um, Claude and then tell it to process this. La, 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 la. Let's wait for it to finish processing. Once it's done, we can go ahead and see how this actually looks. So it's been 30 minutes and we kind of uh, had a lot of progress, I would say. Cool. Okay, what the fuck, dude? Just finished. Okay, I think it's not over. It's just making some changes over and over again. It's a bit buggy at times, especially when it has to refactor a code which it already wrote. Meanwhile, let's look how the stream is doing. I think it's doing quite good right now. Come on, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? Are you an actual retard? This guy's taking forever. Oh my gosh, what the fuck? Come on, dude. Karina's looking pretty good though. This fucker, man, this fucker. Such a stupid cunt. Anyways, yeah, let's see. So look at this. We have a root block. If we have a look at what we specified right here, let's get rid of this. Let's open up our main. Yeah, all right, good. So if we have a look at this, the code. Execution logger example. This is our what do you call it? Our root block. And you know what? Let's make this big and let's try to search for this. Let's see if we have actually stored a block data for this. Okay, so we're running it, but I don't think we're pushing it exactly. Parent, no, block ID is this. Now let's see if this block ID exists as the parent. Parent block ID. Okay, this is the first parent lock. I'm looking for a block ID is equals to this split. Yeah, so just as I suspected, we don't really have a let's call it the run function. We are closing the block instead of flushing it. We are supposed to flush it because The execution block handler already does the closing of the block and everything. What we need is buffer.flush off. Shut down actually, not flush. Cool. So if you run this again, okay, we gotta put some input. I keep on forgetting that. Cool. So if you do that, let's make this big, and let's log in with a different account because this fucker decided to waste all of my sources. Let's use this one. I think this is quite the safe bet, so let's use that. Let's just tell it to show this nicely. I think it can figure out the relationship between the locks and the blocks because it has the block ID and awesome. So we do have square from root, all these things. Root is root block started, sh started, root execution block started. Where's this message coming from? 422. Let's see what the 422 block is. Okay, let's see. There, we're just gonna be this. There, block ID. I want to know if the block name is being passed properly. Let's name a block. Okay. So let's go to main and see what we need. This. I don't get it. Why is the block name always empty? Do you create this? The block name is also that something that we pass. So root logger, root logger, root logger, root logger. So okay, so it's a bit buggy. Tama. Ayo चलो मिलो थलने चलो 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 go together buddy. Anyways, that's gonna be it for the stream. There's a bug that we have to fix. I still haven't figured it out quite yet, so we'll see what we can do about that. Sudah itu kan nang bay na tuwa no ido ito kana.